Welcome, boys and girls. Let's continue exploring the Earth-Sun-Moon system. In this second video, we will look at how the orbits of the Moon and Earth cause eclipses and lunar phases. But first things first, the word lunar comes from the Latin word luna, which means moon. Lunar means of the moon. Okay, now let's bring in our friend Allie the alien to talk about lunar phases. Hi, Allie.
Hi, friends. I once secretly visited Earth in my spaceship, and I learned all about the phases of the moon. As you look out into the night sky from Earth, you may think that the moon has a different shape every night. But what really happens is that a different part of the moon is visible, depending on where the moon is in its orbit around the Earth and which part the sun is shining on. The moon takes about 27 days to orbit the Earth and has no light of its own. It just reflects the sun's light. When the moon is between the Earth and the sun is lighting up the far side of the moon, which you can't see from Earth. That means that you see a dark moon, called a new moon. As the moon moves further in its orbit, you start to see a small portion of the lit up side. This is the waxing crescent moon. Waxing means that the moon appears to be getting bigger. A quarter of the way through its orbit, known as first quarter, half of the lit up side is visible on Earth. Then comes what you Earthlings call waxing gibbous, which is when more than half of the moon is visible. When the moon gets halfway through its orbit, the Earth is between the moon and the sun, and you are able to see the full lit face of the moon. You know this phase as the full moon. As it moves further, the phases progress in reverse order, from waning gibbous to third quarter to waning crescent and back to the new moon. Okay, I'm hungry now. Time for lunch.
Thanks, Allie. Okay, now here's the really cool part. A few times a year, the moon passes directly between the Earth and the sun, and when this happens, the moon blocks the sun's light for a few minutes and casts a shadow on the Earth, and this is called a solar eclipse. In some places, the moon blocks the sun completely, which is called a total solar eclipse, and in other places, the moon blocks only part of the sun, called a partial solar eclipse. Now, in the same way, the moon can also move into the Earth's shadow, and this is called a lunar eclipse. When the Earth blocks the moon completely, it's called a total lunar eclipse, and when the Earth blocks only a part of the moon, it's a partial lunar eclipse. You would think that a lunar eclipse would cause the moon to become invisible, but instead, the Earth's atmosphere scatters sunlight onto the moon and gives it a bright red glow. Lunar eclipses last about 2 hours, much longer than solar eclipses. Now you may ask, if the moon orbits the Earth every 27 days, why don't we see eclipses every month? This is because the moon's orbit around the Earth is inclined to the Earth's orbit around the sun. So most of the time, the moon can pass between the Earth and the sun without casting a shadow on the Earth, like when the Earth is here. But remember that the Earth continues to move around the sun, and so sometimes the moon is between the sun and the Earth and casts its shadow on the Earth, and this is what causes a solar eclipse. Now, over the last 4,000 years, there have been roughly the same amount of lunar and solar eclipses, but because the moon is so much smaller than the Earth, it casts a small shadow, and so each solar eclipse is seen only by a small area on Earth. The Earth, on the other hand, casts a much larger shadow on the moon, and this effect can be seen from anywhere on the night side of the Earth. And in a way, this makes solar eclipses seem more rare than lunar eclipses, because a particular place on Earth will see solar eclipses rarely, but lunar eclipses can be seen much more frequently. And now you know all about lunar phases and eclipses. Thanks for watching.